Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's live stream. You may not have been expecting a live stream tonight. We had a week off. Last week I was away. The next 2 weeks, certainly next week, there won't be a live stream. The week after, there might be. We don't know. But we'll by the end of July, we'll be back into the rhythm of the regular live stream slot. But I'm at home this Tuesday, so I thought, why not? Why not go and talk about some of the issues of the week? And as ever, there are plenty of them. So, where do we start? Let me get the comments on screen. Let's put that. Right, I've got that so the comments come straight up. So, what have we got to talk about this week? Just a couple of short things, just to get warmed up. We had this rather bizarre story. Emma Thompson, who's an actress apparently, government should provide prostitutes on the NHS. I mean, it really is mad, isn't it? I think it's interesting sometimes. You get an insight into just how way out people's views are. I think often you've got people who've got the most outrageous and ridiculous views, but they're asked for their opinion on fairly mainstream issues, and they give their opinion, and people think, they're probably there's quite a well thought out view. This is quite an intelligent person with some authority in this matter. Then you hear what they've got to say about other matters, you realize that they're totally off the wall. I think that's what we've got there. I mean, prostitutes on the NHS. I mean, that's just, yeah. But where do we start with that one? Anyway, let's move on. Right, this was quite funny. I thought. So basically, someone got AI to write some biographies of Nicola Sturgeon, John Swinney, etc. And these books, these AI-written biographies, were available on Amazon to buy. And basically, someone from the Times newspaper, I think, got some of them and criticized them. And they said, these books are not good enough. The problem, it says, you can read the small print at the bottom of the article there. The Times newspaper said that these books contain several false claims. Brother, hang on. How does that show that there's anything wrong with the book? If you're writing a biography about Nicola Sturgeon, of course it's going to contain false claims. She made multiple false claims about the party membership, the party finances, and lots of other things as well. So the fact that a Nicola Sturgeon biography contains false claims, well, that's not any criticism of it at all. If it didn't contain false claims, that would show it was very incomplete, I would say. But anyway, so yeah, be careful you don't buy the AI biographies of SNP politicians on Amazon. Not that I think you're probably going to do that. There's one about Humza Yousaf as well, about the heroic leadership of Humza Yousaf. So yeah, I would guess you haven't got one of those going to be delivered tomorrow in any case. Right. Yeah, there's always it's always good to keep up to date with what Reform are up to. And again, it's this interesting thing where you get Nigel Farage brands same-sex marriage law wrong. I didn't support it. So what's the message in the headlines that you get? Nigel Farage Reform sort of against same-sex marriage somehow or other. That's the headline. But then it's always in the small print. You realize, well, no, that's not actually true. And so that's exactly what we've got going on again here. So let's have a look in the article. When asked about same-sex marriage, which was made law in 2013, that's in Pink. I think this article is from Pink News, actually. Before the first ceremonies were performed in 2014, he said, "It is a settled issue. I didn't support it. I thought it was wrong to introduce it to the public without even putting it in a manifesto. I was very surprised that David Cameron did that. I thought the civil partnership arrangement that we had was actually working equitably and fairly. So I thought the work that was done was wrong, but look, we have moved on." Classic Nigel Farage, exactly like the Conservative Party. You see the pattern. So at the time when same-sex marriage was a big controversy, oh yes, we're against this. No, this shouldn't be happening. We don't think this is necessary. This is not a good thing at all. But then 10 years later, well, okay, I was against it then, but we've moved on. We've moved on. It's a settled issue. In other words, once we passed in the Parliament, we forget about it, and that's it. That's all going to be fine. That's a bit like Kate Forbes' line on same-sex marriage as well. She said she would have voted against it before, I would say, she started denying what she really believes. She said she would have voted against it, but now respects the democratic decision. I mean, what does that mean? If you're a politician, you respect the democratic decision. So politicians shouldn't really try and change anything. Doesn't make any sense. Anyway, but the thing with this with Reform is, how many people just see the headline? And for some people, that will make them think, oh, Nigel Farage reformed, they're very bad. Oh, don't like them. Just shows how bad they are. That's probably what the writer of this headline and similar headlines, that's what they're expecting their audience to think. But how about people who are, say, Christians, Muslims, social conservatives? They'll read that and think, oh, that's good. They're against same-sex marriage, are we? Well, that's on my wavelength. But if they don't read the small print, they won't realize that, no, it's not. They're not again. It's basically saying, it's settled, we moved on, it's fine. I mean, I'm not opposing it anymore. It's the same effect we had with the abortion time limits. Nigel Farage said maybe we should have a debate about bringing the abortion time limit down by a couple of weeks. And that was the headline. But then in the small print, Nigel Farage says he's pro-choice. So it's an interesting effect there. Right, how about that then? Did you see this one? It's very disappointing, isn't it? The late Queen resisted LGBT endorsements. I mean, she must have been under very considerable pressure. Should have been bombarded by invitations to pride events and suggestions that they fly the flag and do whatever. There would have been all sorts. And the Queen, in a dignified, quiet manner, basically resisted them all. There would have been considerable pressure. There were some people, LGBT activists, who were complaining about that. They were saying, look, it's really obvious the Queen never does anything related to Pride Month or whatever. But they're quite right, partly because the Queen, as a Christian, wouldn't have wanted to celebrate Pride Month, and also because the royal family is supposed to be neutral. And pride is a political issue. It's the sort of issue, it's a controversial issue on which there should be neutrality. King Charles just doesn't get it at all. I think he's so surrounded himself with that progressive left-wing figures that he thinks the pride is uncontroversial. That's something the royal family can be endorsing. But he is wrong. So it's very disappointing to see. And the people he'll most alienate by doing this are the people who are most likely to support the monarchy. It's like it's a death wish for the monarchy, really. If you try and pander to the left-wing progressive people, is that going to secure the monarchy? Well, no, you're not going to win them. And the more you give to them, the more they'll demand as well. But there's some people who are not going to support the monarchy, come what may. And there's others who might well do, and they're alienating the people who really would be their core support. So not a smart move at all. But what else has been going on? The Orange Walk marchers hit with air weapon pellets. Now, someone fired, was it 4 pellets from some sort of air gun or airsoft gun or something like that? No one was hit. People were hit, but they weren't injured. So this is not a deadly weapon. It's probably the sort of weapon that, okay, it might have done something to hit someone in the eye, maybe. But generally, it wouldn't be, what would you even describe? You probably would describe it as violence, but it's not deadly violence. So this happened. The police, I think, have they made some arrests? I'm not sure. But it's just interesting seeing the reaction to it. Now, I've lived in Scotland more than half my life now. I haven't lived in Glasgow. But looking at the sort of sectarian scene in Glasgow, I mean, it really is something to behold, to see people's responses to this. So what you get is some people saying, this is really bad. These are loyalists. If this happened to anyone else, that would be really up in arms about it. Then you got other people on the other side, the bad characters who'll be saying, got what they deserved. Why didn't they use real bullets, etc. So you get that. There'll be equally outrageous, offensive, unpleasant people on the other side as well. But what seems to happen is each side focuses on the bad people on the other side. Within the people who are embroiled in this, I know a lot of people are not, but the people who are embroiled in this, they focus on the bad acts on the other side and sort of try to downplay what happens on their side. And it's just, I don't know. I mean, words fail me. I mean, it's a pitiful spectacle to see that otherwise intelligent people getting sucked into this, that they feel, there's like a tribal identity, and you're on the side of one group, regardless of the behavior, you're on that side of it. And I know it's fading away, but the sooner it fades, away, the better. I mean, Craig Houston made a video about this. He says he's making a video next week about why the Battle of the Boyne should be celebrated more widely. I mean, you've probably heard me say before, in Scotland, it's as though the 17th century finished at the end of last week. These are still live issues at the heart of people's identity. I mean, okay, learn about history. It's very interesting. It does have an influence to today, but to be studying history and bringing historical events into the present in order to, assert tribal identity, whatever, well, we could do without it, I think. Anyway, so that was a little story there. Now, Boy George, he pops up every now and again, doesn't he? I mean, he was around when I was a lot younger, so he must be getting on a bit now. Anyway, I mean, this is quite a remarkable post on X. See what you can make of this. So he's talking about the unfairness that female athletes face when they have to compete against males who call themselves transgender. So, any man running against Usain Bolt is facing unfairness in their own category. In other words, he's saying because Usain Bolt used to beat all the other men in the sprint, then that just shows that you've got nothing to complain about if someone beats you in the event. So therefore, women shouldn't complain just because there's a man in their category who beats them. I'm not even going to lay out what's wrong with that because it's so obvious, isn't it? But isn't it just bizarre that this is something that a significant public figure is putting out? I mean, dear me, unbelievable. Right, a comment from Daniel. I'm surprised the bigger deal was not made at the shooting at the Orange Walk. Can you imagine the police and political response? 4 people have been shot by a sniper at a Great Pride March. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there would be much, or some sort of outdoor Muslim event, whatever. I mean, that would be a hate crime, wouldn't it? There would be hell to pay for that. Yes, absolutely agree. But you're a significant cultural figure. Okay, I'm backtracking on that as I think about it. He's a well-known figure. Let's put it that way. He is a well-known figure. I mean, surely, I mean, to put something like that that's so utterly ridiculous, you should be entirely embarrassed by it. But he's probably not. So, anyway, moving on. Again, now a couple of things about reform. Again, this is really interesting. This is an article from the Mail, the Daily Mail. Reform set to repeal assisted dying legislation in next general election if it passes through the Lords. Okay. Now, if I was, a floating voter, say, I would read that and think, oh, great. Right, reform. They're going to repeal it. Oh, that's fantastic. And that's really warmed me to reform. I think I might go off and join them now. Oh, that's really good. Reform are going to repeal it. Are they? What evidence has the Daily Mail got that this is the case here? Let's have a look. A campaign source. So just someone somewhere in reform, who knows? Central, local branch, who knows? Bearing in mind how dangerous the bill will be for vulnerable people, it's not unreasonable for different political parties to think about what might happen if it does become law. If the leadership of a party is of a view that the legal status quo is dangerous, it would be only natural for them to want to scrap the system. Okay? And that justifies the headline, reform set to repeal assisted dying legislation in next general election. I mean, that's a massive jump, isn't it? From one person, whoever this person is, one person within the reform system saying, he's basically saying, if reform's leadership decides that they want to, then they'll put in the manifesto to repeal assisted dying. And the Daily Mail ends up with that headline. Do you see what it's the same effect again I was talking about with Nigel Farage and same-sex marriage? The media jump on anything that's might be a little bit social conservative, and they amplify it massively in the headlines and ludicrously exaggerate it. And it's very frustrating. And I just hope people realize that is basically not true. Reform or not set to put it in the manifesto. I'll come on to later. It's also said that they might pledge to repeal decriminalization of abortion. I think that is possible, because they might think that's not particularly controversial. So maybe they'll do that. But my guess would be they won't want either of those issues in the general election campaign. Reform will want to be talking about immigration, net zero, all the usual things, promising the earth to anyone as well, taking money from the magic money tree. So I don't believe Reform will do that. But this article is totally unjustified. Now, look at some of the comments under it. Now, this is obviously not scientific in the slightest, but this is just a screenshot of some of the comments under the article. I support Reform, but that's a vote loser for me. That will be the biggest vote loser for Reform. Just lost my vote. And I think that's the reason why Reform will not be putting that in their manifesto. It divides their supporters in half, as it divided their MPs in half as well, roughly, 3-2. So that their elected politicians are divided on it, their supporters are divided on it, their potential supporters are divided on it. So why ever should they put it in the manifesto? Now, why do we put it in our manifesto? Because it's a matter of principle. It's absolutely fundamental moral principle that we're going to uphold. So it'll be in our manifesto. But is Reform a party of fundamental moral principle? Well, absolutely not. So why would they really lose an awful lot of votes by putting that in the manifesto? They just won't. Okay, come back and tell me I'm wrong in 4 years' time. I'll admit it myself. But I cannot imagine that they will put that in their manifesto for exactly this reason, that it will be very, very divisive. Reform seem to have a lot of favourable plans in the media. Well, GB News is the media wing of Reform UK. That's more than plants. I mean, basically, you look at it where you like. Either GB News is the media wing of Reform UK, or Reform UK is the political wing of GB News. I mean, some of GB News' output, it's like blatant propaganda promoting reform. It's not remotely journalism. It's laughable, some of it. I'm not saying they should be shut down, but anyone watching it, surely, if people are not aware that that's what they're watching, then they really should be. John, when asked, Nigel Farage always claims that important moral issues are a matter of personal conscience, a cop-out. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's another weapon in the armory for politicians like Nigel Farage. Oh, yes, I happen to think this, but anyone else can think whatever they like. I don't care. For me, I think it's a really terrible thing. It's very wrong. But if it goes on, I don't mind. I don't mind if you do it. It doesn't matter. Which I think is a really, really bizarre thing. Reforms certainly weren't named after the Reformation. Now, that's an interesting point. Someone online not too long ago tried to claim with some bizarre contrived wordplay that somehow Reform was a continuation of the Reformation. And someone replied in no uncertain terms that these things are entirely unrelated. Anyway, so moving on. This prostitution bill issue, criminalization of buying sex issue, is rumbling along, and the media are just starting to crank up their pro-sex worker, prostitute in other words, their pro-prostitute campaign. I think the BBC are at it a bit. It's more widely in the media. This was a massive article in the Herald I said it was by Neil Mackay. It was basically written, it was a compilation of quotes from prostitutes arguing their case. So he basically handed over his weekly column to prostitutes to write. And again, the fundamental, I won't go through it in detail, but the fundamental issue with it is this, is if you make something illegal, the idea is that people don't do it. You see, that's the way law works. So you say, for example, you're not allowed to, as soon as a thing is illegal, that means you're not allowed to do it. So people don't do it unless they're going to break the law. If they do break the law, then they should expect to be punished. Whereas prostitutes seem to take the view, okay, you can make this illegal, well, the buying of sex. So if the buying of sex is illegal, the transaction is illegal. So in effect, yeah, the prostitution transaction becomes illegal. But they're saying, but if you make it illegal, it'll be more dangerous when we do it. I just want to say, no. The idea of law is when something's illegal, people don't do it anymore. You can't say, okay, you're going to make it illegal. I'm going to do it in any case, but it's going to be more inconvenient or dangerous or whatever. It's a bit like saying, you've made burglary illegal, but all that's done is it means now I have to break into houses at nighttime. I have to go up a ladder and climb in through the window. It's really dangerous. I break the glass, then I go crawling around the house. People panic, and then people come at me with weapons, and it's made burglary really dangerous. I mean, before you criminalized it, I could just go and knock on the door and say to people, right, I'm going to beat you up or whatever if you don't let me come in and take your stuff. And it was much easier. It was much safer then. But now they've criminalized it. Look how dangerous it is. Look how difficult it's made it for us. As though you're supposed to sympathize with the people breaking the law. So we're going to hear a lot more of that over the weeks to come. Is this going to pass in the Scottish Parliament? I don't know. I'm inclined to think not. I mean, there are the feminists are behind, a certain group of feminists are behind it, but I think in general there's a bigger group of people in the Parliament who have a more libertarian harm reduction sort of approach. So I don't think it will pass, but we will see. We will see. Well, just to reiterate, this ridiculous bill will decriminalize soliciting. So prostitutes will be able to promote their trade in the street freely or in other ways as well. But it won't make the selling of sex illegal. So if you like, prostitution itself will be legal, but their customers will be breaking the law, which is just an utterly ridiculous issue. Right. Let's have a look what we've got in the comments. Right. Parties don't always keep to their manifestos. Too right. But make statements of their outlook. I think that's a big part of the election process. I mean, manifestos maybe are not the important thing. You need to look at the party's values and understand their values, then think, how will they respond to decisions or issues that come up in the future on the basis of those values? I believe there should be a legal accountability system that applies to manifestos. So let's say Keir Starmer Labour Party, they get elected on a manifesto and they promise to do certain things. And if they don't do them, there should be a penalty. Like you lose, now 20 MPs have to stand down and you have a by-election in 20 constituencies. Now, a political penalty for not keeping to your manifesto. What that would do pretty quickly is the manifestos would be couched with all sorts of provisos and reservations, which should probably be no bad thing. And for like the SNP is one of the worst for promising things in manifestos. Young people will give you a laptop. Did they do it? No, as far as I'm aware. Last I heard, no, didn't do it. But who cares? They got the votes through it. And then there's no legal redress. In other words, manifestos should be like legal contracts. And in voting for them, you're entering into that contract. And so if the people have voted for them and then they don't fulfill their side of the contract, then there needs to be redress. And the redress, I say, could be in the form that basically you lose some of your MPs and you have to have by-elections. I think that would really sharpen up politics. SFP, SFP are not under Ofcom, but GB News is and must stay in the middle. Well, GB News is under Ofcom, but I don't agree. I think the Family Party policy as well. We don't agree with the regulation that says broadcast media have to be neutral. We think if you want to run GB News as the media wing of Reform UK, that should be absolutely fine. People can decide if they want to watch it or not. If they want to watch the media wing of the Lib Dems, they can watch the BBC. And that's fine. They shouldn't have to be neutral. They should be able to broadcast what they like. But currently the regulation is there does have to be a degree of neutrality. GB News have been in trouble about that a few times. But I think basically when they're not flouting the letter of the regulation, they're flouting the spirit of it quite flagrantly. So I think under the current regulation, then I think they're vulnerable to action, which has happened to them in a few ways. They are restrained by the regulations, but still they're very biased. That's the first time We've had that viewer. Okay, welcome. Read the Gospels of Peace. I have done that. I strongly recommend it. Okay, right. Let's see what else we've got here. This was remarkable. Let's imagine you're the Conservatives in the UK at the moment. I mean, you're up against it. I mean, you're on the ropes here with reform. But what have you got in your favour? What cause have you got to play? I mean, if you go chasing after reform on their own policies, well, why should people vote for you if you're just the same as reform? What can the Conservatives have? I think what they can say is, we've got experience. We're a more serious party. We're more temperate. We don't have as many wacky characters. We're more professional. We're not so outrageous. We're more solid and mainstream. And we can run the economy properly. I think reform are promising everything to anyone, that they're becoming a high-spending party. So that's what the Conservatives have got. They've got the economic responsibility, which, okay, is a bit of a hard sell at the moment because people remember events of not too long ago. But they're being more professional, temperate, and mainstream. That's what they've got. That could be one of their selling points. But then they're going to put this on social media. So this is Trump. Remember Trump when he was talking about Israel and Iran and said they don't know what the F they're doing. Okay, so not impressed, Mr. Trump. Anyway, that's what he said. So the Conservatives retweet it, saying the entire country whenever a Labour politician opens their mouth. So the Conservatives, I said, you've got 2 points. You've got two cards to play. One is economic wisdom, responsibility, whatever, financial restraint. Okay, it's a bit of a hard sell at the moment. And the other one is that you're temperate, responsible, mainstream, serious, and professional. And then they're going to put something like that on social media. And then they took it down pretty sharpish. But you just think, really? I mean, I think with the Conservative Party, like the person doing the social media, this is not some GAP student just being left to it. This would be something that is, a highly professionalized outfit putting out their social media content, and they put that out. So, yeah, not impressed with that. Now, you'll have been following this issue, unfair trials for people accused of sexual assault and rape. Who gets accused of sexual assault and rape? In almost all cases, it's men. And so what we've got here is basically feminist influence on the justice system, because feminists have been saying for ages not enough men get convicted of rape and sexual assault. The conviction rate is relatively low compared to other crimes. And you can understand why these things come to court. Then it's one person's word against another, because often the act took place. The question is whether or not it was consensual. However, you're going to solve that when you've got two drunk people in a private place. How do you possibly untangle that one? And a lot of juries say, well, we can't untangle this one. We're not sending someone to prison without any sort of credible evidence here, convincing evidence. So the feminists said, well, that's not good enough. We want to see men. The reason they're interested in the issue is women tend to be the victims, men tend to be the perpetrators. So they're saying we want more men locking up because that will be justice, because we're feminists, so we're on the women's side. So pressure over the years has been applied to the justice system, and there have been tweaks made in various ways. I won't go into the details, but they've basically made it more and more difficult for a man accused of sexual assault or rape to get a fair trial. And there's a couple of illustrations in this article that really help us to understand what's going on here. I've heard various stories about it from various people. I've spoken to Casey in particular, who's involved in this type of work, and they have very significant concerns. But let's have a look at these two stories. Well, before we get to the stories, we've reached the stage where the victim has lied about things, and the court has not allowed the defense to put that before the jury. So there shouldn't be the word victim, the alleged victim. The alleged victim has lied about things, so they've given evidence to the police that has been shown to be a lie. Now, if you imagine you're standing trial and the person accusing you has shown themselves to be a liar about this very case that you're now involved in, now that is vital information for the jury to know, because that will undermine the credibility of the witness. Witnesses have reliability and credibility. A reliable witness is one who's competent. They've got a good memory. They can explain what they saw articulately or whatever. A credible witness is one who tries to tell the truth. So if you've shown that someone's lied, then their credibility is shot. And the jury will think, I'm really not inclined to believe this person. I'm more inclined to believe the other person. Again, vital evidence, but they're saying that can't be presented to the jury. How can it be said that someone has had a fair trial when it's been proved that the complainer lied about something important in the course of the inquiry, and that was not allowed to be introduced as evidence? This is a KC speaking here. I mean, I think that is just outrageous. It's really pushing out justice in order to push in feminist objectives, to increase the number of men who get convicted. I mean, just to say about these sexual assaults and rapes, I think for people who are guilty of sexual assault or rape, they could probably thank their lucky stars that I'm not in charge of the sentencing for that, because they get a pretty severe sentence. And all these cases where, you know, they're claiming that it was consensual. I mean, my values would be, in 99% of the cases, these people are not married, not a man or woman or married. They shouldn't have been having sex full stop or any sort of sexual activity. So, you know, I'm not defending the accused here as being righteous in any way. If my principles applied, none of these cases would exist. But still, people need to be treated fairly. Right, let's have a look. It's got a comment in here. Do you think people should be suspended from work after police charge of sexual abuse before a trial? I think this is a really difficult area, this idea of suspending people, because it happens so much now, and it turns someone's life upside down. So it effectively hands power to anyone, basically, can just fire in a letter, make a phone call, make some accusation, and you can say you can turn someone's life upside down. They're under suspicion of a serious, embarrassing, disgraceful crime, and then it might amount to nothing. In that case, I think basically the accusers need to be fearful as well. Now, if it turns out that the accusation was in good faith, the person was giving an accurate, seems to be an accurate side of the story, then fair enough. But if a person's lied, then I think they need to fear the consequences as well. For the system to be balanced and fair, people need to fear the consequences of making a false allegation. Right, re-traumatizing the victim. I know that's a consideration in these cases, and they're trying to avoid the victim having to tell their story again and again, and to confront the accused, etc. But I think the issue here is basically whatever you're going to do in a court process, justice is paramount. You try and deal with the pastoral issues, if you like, but justice is paramount. An innocent person accused wrongly could lose their job and future life prospects. Yes, absolutely, and that is totally wrong. Totally wrong. Also, family party policy. Family party policy is to keep people's names out of the public domain until there's a verdict as well. And also, I don't like this thing where someone's found innocent in a criminal court, but then they launch a civil case for rape, say, against their accuser. Civil case, standard of evidence, balance of probability. That's not a high enough standard of evidence to destroy someone's life. So, yeah, but I don't think you should be able to take these civil cases out as well. Right, let's listen to these cases here. How about this one? In one of the cases, the victim alleged that the accused had raped her when she was 13, claiming she became pregnant and gave birth to a child. Okay. However, there was no evidence that she'd become pregnant or given birth, a matter that the accused wanted to present to the jury. Now, that's a pretty catastrophic problem for the prosecution case, isn't it? If she can't produce evidence of being pregnant and having a child. And anyone who's been pregnant and had a child, there'll be documentary evidence of that should be very easily accessible and could easily be produced in the case. So if the defendant wants to say, actually, or the defending lawyer wants to say, actually, we don't believe you became pregnant, we don't believe you gave birth to a child, then that should be fair enough. then the accuser should bring forward the evidence, which would be very straightforward to do. But what happened here? His lawyer had taken the view that it was extremely unlikely that the trial court would allow such evidence to be presented, and the Scottish Appeal Court agreed with that assessment and refused his appeal. In other words, this was not allowed to be brought into the case, even though it could have been proved, maybe it could have been proved very easily that the accuser was lying and had made up a crucial part of the story that wasn't allowed to be explored in the court case. As far as I'm concerned, that's not a fair trial. So I've got, maybe the person did rape this girl. I don't know. But this, if that information couldn't be introduced into the hearing, then that's not a fair trial. Something's gone very, very wrong here. Right. So here's another one. I'm just going to put my light on now. I'll read this in full. It's quite instructive. Again, it's another illustration of what's going on in the courts. So Mr. Ross said a second case at the Supreme Court revolved around a man convicted of rape following a work night out. The man was with the woman whom he supervised in a pub where both were drinking. There was apparently CCTV evidence showing the complainer beckoning the accused into the disabled toilet where they had sex, said Mr. Ross. They both later left the bar, got a taxi to his house, and woke up the next morning in bed together. The woman alleged she was raped. Okay. Now, just to think about that for a moment, if the rape was in the toilet in the pub, surely there can be no credibility that she was raped and then she went off with him in a taxi of her own accord to his house and went to bed with him. I mean, that cannot possibly be taken seriously, can it? Now, someone would say, oh, technically it could be true, but really there'd have to be extremely convincing evidence and reasoning to make that credible in any way at all. Anyway, so the man was interviewed by the police and he explained events in the pub exactly as they'd been captured on the CCTV. He was then charged with rape in the disabled pub toilet and rape in the house. But the prosecutor became aware that the judge may allow CCTV evidence from the pub. So he dropped the pub charge. Okay, so the woman was saying, I was raped in the pub toilet, I was raped at the man's house. Okay, which is really not very credible. But then she finds out the CCTV footage from the pub, which shows her beckoning the man over to the toilet. That could be used in the trial. So what does she do? They drop the pub charge. They say, okay, well, forget about the pub charge. We'll just say the rape was at the man's house then. Because the pub one, that's obviously not going to stand up, is it? We'll just go for the other one. With the result that the defense was not allowed to lead evidence about what had happened in the pub. His account of what happened in the pub was entirely supported by CCTV evidence. It supported his credibility, but he wasn't allowed to put the CCTV evidence before the jury, as the court ruled that it wasn't relevant to the charges at his home. That is just totally wrong, isn't it? Totally and utterly wrong. So the person's case has got a major problem with it, is that you're claiming two rapes in two different places, but you've voluntarily gone to the second place. I mean, this really is undermining the credibility of the witness to a massive, massive degree, isn't it? And it's boosting the credibility of the accused as well, whose story is matching up with the evidence. And it's also showing that in the pub, the woman's claiming it's rape, but it really appears in the CCTV footage that, well, that there's reason to doubt that. Let's put it that way. So as far as I'm concerned, what's going on in courts about that? I've heard other stories as well, I say, from people involved in this. I mean, it's appalling. Travesty of justice. There's an organization set up. Have I still got it open? I haven't got it open anymore. I think it's called Justice for Falsely Accused Men or something. And it's full of stories like this. And it's totally wrong and it needs sorting out. Right. Why didn't that happen Why isn't that happening in the Scottish Parliament? Basically, because the parties tend to be frightened of feminists. They're worried that if they try and deal with this, they'll be accused of being on the side of rapists and people accused of sexual assault or whatever. But they'll actually be on the side of justice. So, right there. Let's have a look at looking back at your slide. It was not Mr. Bolt, Mr. Blot. What was that about? That? Yeah, I'm not sure which one that was about. Was that about Usain Bolt winning the races? I could clarify. Right, what else? Yeah. Like I said, that's the problem. I was called to jury duty twice a few years ago now, and I had to go to the court, and so I sat there and heard the charges read out. But then they draw the numbers out of the bowl, and I wasn't actually chosen to the duty. But both of them, it was like rape or sexual assault, and both of them, I mean, in my humble opinion, the accused looked like a total thug. But also, it seemed like both of them were blind drunk, and no one else was there. And I thought, good luck to the jury making any sense of this one. But the real message coming to this should be to, I would say, to ladies in particular, really avoid this situation. I'm not condoning anything. I say, if whether rape's taken place, I would be very severe about that. But if you put yourself in a very vulnerable position with a man who's drunk or you don't know very well or whatever, then it's dangerous. It's dangerous. Now, feminists might say that's really bad. It shouldn't be dangerous. It shouldn't be dangerous. I absolutely agree. I would say this sort of encounter shouldn't be happening full stop. It shouldn't be dangerous in any way at all. I wish it wasn't, but the unfortunate fact is that it is. So I would urge people to avoid these situations. Same for men as well. I would say just avoid these situations, basically, because it is increasingly dangerous. Right. People are trying to increase the success rate of convictions rape above 1%. I think it's a lot higher than 1%, but it is lower than other crimes. It is lower than other crimes. So I guess if people came to the justice system with regard to rape and sexual assault, if there was a genuine problem to try to address, then fine. Try and address it. Try to enable the justice system to work better. Try to enable the evidence to be shown in a more thorough manner. Help the jury to understand the evidence, whatever. Things to help the justice system to work better. I'm all for them. But these are things of making the justice system work less well. The thinking behind it, for example, with the toilet issue, they'd be saying, well, what happened like 2 hours earlier? That's nothing to do with this. That they would see it almost like character evidence. So if you're showing that the woman was promiscuous or whatever, or she wanted to have sex with him 2 hours before, that's got no bearing whatsoever of whether or not she wanted to have sex with him 2 hours later. Well, I would say it does have bearing. It does have bearing. If the man is going to be trying to communicate that he believed she was consenting, then the events leading up to the sexual encounter are relevant to building up his picture of whether she thought she was consenting or not. So, caliber of people working in the justice system seems questionable, to say the least. I think it's like everything in Scotland. So many things in Scotland, they get infused with the progressive ideology because Scotland's institutions are just dominated by a sort of secular, progressive, left-leaning worldview, and it's taken for granted. And so within the justice system, it's like I was speaking to the Procurator Fiscal and Crown Office people at Pride, saying you shouldn't be here because you're supposed to be neutral, and they just can't get it. They think, well, we are being neutral. And same with feminism. We say, right, this is feminist principle demands this. The justice system will say, oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's normal. That's what everyone thinks. So yeah, we'll go along with that. That's just modernizing and improving the service. But it's not. It's not. It's deteriorating the service. Right. So yeah, I thought that gave some quite interesting insight into what's going on there. I'm trying to think if I can remember some of the other stories I've heard. Yeah, the other stories I heard about this issue is things like when someone has sent a text message. Let's say a couple have sex one night, they send a text message the next day saying, "Wow, that was great, wasn't it? Come up to my hotel room tonight as well. Let's do it again." And then the man goes to the hotel room again that night to have sex again, and the woman says it was rape, which it might have been. And it might have been, for all I know, the woman had changed her mind and the bloke went berserk and held it, whatever. But you need to know this background information in order to weigh up what had happened there. So, right, what else have we got? Right, just this is a big event for us coming up. I've mentioned it lots of times. I'll give it one more mention. The Refuel Festival up in Gordon Castle Estate near to Fochabers up in it's in Moray, isn't it? It's not in Aberdeenshire, it's in Moray. It's a sort of evangelical, charismatic Christian festival, but we have a tent there, and we're having a little conference on the Wednesday afternoon, 23rd of July, 2 till 4:30, and a barbecue afterwards. Hang around for a barbecue with us as well. So do come to join us. It's free to get into the event. You can find details online. It's free to get into the event. It's free to come to our conference, and you can just come to that if you want to. So say 2 till 4:30 with a barbecue afterwards. Who've we got speaking? I'm going to do like about an hour question and answer session, sort of off the cuff session. Then our Northeast chairman, Ewan Morris, is giving a speech. We've got a young lady called Beth from the Council for Bioethical Reform, and she's going to be talking about the pro-life issue. And then we've got another couple of slots as well. So do join us for that if you can. We've got other events through the week, but the Wednesday afternoon is our big event. If you're a family party member, if you want to come and help us out, come along to the stall and chat to people, or sit and have a cup of tea with us, then that would be great. It's basically an outdoor event where family parties got a little tent. It's like more like a gazebo with walls type tent. So we've got some materials in there to give out. And when we have events, we'll sit outside. People bring your own chair, bring your own folding chair, sit outside, and that will have our events. So yeah, it'd be great to see you there. And we've got 10 minutes to go. Now, these last two slides, they've been sitting at the end of my live stream slides for months and months and months and months, and I never quite get to them. But tonight we have. So here we are. Let's talk about these things. There's two on the same issue. They're on the harm reduction issue. Now, this was from a website of a government-funded organization, and it's talking about, sorry to have to talk about this, and it's talking about Chemsex, which is basically combining taking drugs, usually illegal drugs, with having sex. Now, needless to say, this is not a good idea for a number of reasons. Where do we even start? But this is not a good idea. This is a very destructive and dangerous practice. So what advice has this government-funded organization got for us? Key things to know. Men are involved in chemsex for all kinds of reasons, and we aren't here to judge people. Men, this is particularly from a gay organization supporting, allegedly, gay men. So we're not here to judge people. So if someone takes illegal drugs and engages in homosexual sex, then we're not to judge that. That's all fine. Drug use in chemsex is closely linked to increased sex drive and lower inhibitions in relation to sex. Increased sex drive. Well, this is like an advert for it. This is not information. This is not warning. This is not presenting the law. This is almost saying, this is great. Why not give this a go? Lower inhibitions in relation to sex. Again, are they suggesting that's a good thing? I think generally that's probably a bad thing. So often when people, for example, drink too much alcohol, that their inhibitions go down and they end up doing things that they regret, things that other people regret. That's when you get a lot of sexual crime and all sorts of unwanted pregnancies, relationships, just chaos, just a total mess. But lowering inhibitions in relation to sex with drugs, well, that seems to be okay. Some men feel comfortable with their use of chems and talk about experiencing a heightened sense of pleasure, intimacy, and sexual freedom. Right, so that's an advert, basically, isn't it? That's like, wait, why don't you give it a go? Others can find that chems can cause significant problems in relation to mental health and dependency. No, who'd have thought it? Who'd have thought using these illegal drugs would lead to problems with mental health and dependency? Of course they do. And when they've wrecked someone's mental health, left them maybe incapable of working, incapable of maintaining healthy relationships, a dependency, maybe a drug addict, who's going to pay them? Now, sympathy for them. Absolutely. I mean, I've been involved in trying to help people like this. I've got great sympathy for the person. And, if they turn up to my church, I'll go and have a chat with them and try and help. And I've got every respect for charities who try and help people who get into this sort of total mess. But for the government to be basically endorsing this, and the moral issue, of course, people get themselves into this mess, but then other people suffer the consequences, including the taxpayer. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't want my taxes being used to sort out people's self-inflicted problems. Now, if they have already inflicted them, then okay, yeah, we're going to help and the taxes will be spent. But I would prefer they didn't get into a mess in the first place, then didn't require the resources of the state to try and get them out of it. Right, then the last one. People who want to change their relationship to chems and chemsex can access non-judgmental support. Well, if they want to get in touch with the family party, we're very happy to provide judgmental support. But judgmental support will be much more valuable, much more helpful for the person involved. If you really care about someone, you won't be saying, oh, you just do whatever you think, is up to you. You'll genuinely want the person to make good decisions for the rest of their life. You'll want to protect them from very serious harms. So say people can contact the family party and we'll provide excellent, absolutely judgmental support. People can change their relationship. So that's implying, if you fancy giving this a go, then come and chat to us and we'll give you a bit of advice. Maybe, what drugs, maybe this is a good drug to start off with. Maybe try this one. I mean, it's really, it's quite sickening, but this is government-funded Scotland. Again, now, how far do these messages reach into schools and with young people? Well, how many, anyone can go and access that website for a start, so that is not good. Now, if I remember rightly, because I put these slides in months ago, there's another one on this topic, and here it is. So again, this is about the harm reduction approach. So you've got something that's just often just plain wrong and plain dangerous. And the best advice is don't do it. And often we have laws saying, we're not going to let you do this because it's so dangerous. It poses such a cost on society. Anyway, so let's go to this. So a transgender charity allegedly trained volunteers to advise self-harming children to use clean razor blades. LGBT Youth Scotland was reported to the charity regulator by a whistleblower who claims they were given shocking and callous instructions on how to deal with young people who were intentionally harming themselves. Instead of discouraging children from harming themselves, in other words, instead of being judgmental, because saying to children, don't do that, you need to stop doing that, that would be judgmental, so you can't do that. So instead of discouraging children from hurting themselves, it's alleged that managers said that they were arming themselves as a coping harming themselves as a coping mechanism. It would be wrong to take that away from them. Instead, volunteers were allegedly told, we have to ask them if they were using clean razor blades. Again, that is the harm reduction process, harm reduction policy at its most extreme. So children cutting themselves, injuring themselves, you can't stop it, just have to make it slightly less dangerous. So if you've got so if someone's cutting their wrists with a clean razor blade, then that's at least something. Now you may say, oh yeah, you can sort of see the logic. And I suppose if someone is going to do it, it would be better that they did that. But the other side is, if you're giving the message, hey, we realize this is something you're going to want to do, that's fine, but let's just help you make it a bit safer. That normalizes it, and it misses the opportunity to encourage or help people to actually stop doing these things. Right, that's a perceptive comment. They'll be setting up a cutting room next. And that will be exactly the philosophy. where you can get clean razor blades to self-harm safely. Now, a few years ago, I made a video taking the mickey out of this philosophy. I mean, to be honest, it's a video that deserves several 100,000 views, but it didn't get that many. But what I made it as it was a video to be shown in schools about joyriding, and it took the harm reduction approach. So it didn't say stealing cars is illegal, driving cars when you're not insured is illegal, driving cars when you haven't got a driving license is illegal, joyriding is really dangerous for you and other people, and it's just totally wrong, so don't do it. None of that at all. It took the harm reduction approach. So it basically said, hey kids, we know you're going to steal cars and drive them like totally maniacs. We realize that. We know that's something you're wanting to do. So, okay, maybe we don't approve, but, okay, fair enough. But what we'd like to do is give you a free helmet. Come along to the police station and we'll give you a free helmet. And then if you do crash, it will keep you a bit safer. And the other thing is, I mean, that tight bend at the end of the high street, I mean, just, you really need to brake hard for that one. Just be quite careful on that. We've had some people crash there quite nastily. So when you've stolen a car, just be careful. It said, and the first time you steal a car to drive it like crazy, we recommend you start with quite a slow car. Just start with an ordinary car. If you steal some like mega exotic sports car the first time, you're probably going to have a really serious accident. This sort of thing, taking the mickey out of this this harm reduction approach, but it is dominant in Scottish schools and Scottish public sector in general. It is absolutely dominant. And I always remember when I was teaching, a police officer coming in, talking to 12 and 13-year-old boys, saying, right, boys, when you take this drug, make sure you drink lots of water with it. Otherwise, you'll have a terrible headache the next day. So I waved off the police officer and then said, right, boys, just forget that. Ignore that. Yeah, not when you take this drug. You're not going to take this drug because you've got more sense, haven't you? Right, just to, clean needles for drugs. Yeah, exactly the same thing. As though you've totally given up on the idea of changing someone's behavior. But you're saying they're going to do it in any case. And the thing they're going to do is often inherently dangerous. It cannot be made safe. And it is also immoral because of its effect on other people. So you just have to try and tweak it. And the message that gives to the people is, if you can make it a little bit safer, then go ahead. Go ahead, that's fine. Society will foot the bill. You can turn yourself into a total drain on society. And we're cool with that because we're not judgmental. Well, maybe people do need to understand that judgments can be very valid in those circumstances. Right, time has flown. Thank you very much for your comments. It'd be great to see you at Refuel if you can make it. I know it's a long way away for a lot of people. Do come along. I'm sure you'd find it enjoyable if you're around that part of the world. Right, so there'll be no live stream next week. When we're at Refuel, we might do an impromptu live stream from Refuel. We shall see. But I think the week after that, we'll be back in action with the live streams, all being well. So thanks for watching, and see you next time. Good night.